Ayala effect and fan base behind me is gonna be funny. She's carrying the crowd, so it's gonna be interesting.
Somewhere in Manila right now, someone is sending a screenshot to their family group chat. It's not a screenshot of a match score. It's a photo of a building in New York City with a 21-year-old Filipina's face stretched 3 stories high above the streets of Manhattan. Alex Eala didn't win a Grand Slam this year. She's not even the top-ranked woman heading into the US Open. She's not American. She's not a household name outside the Philippines and hardcore tennis circles. And yet, out of every single player on the WTA Tour, out of former world number ones, out of slam champions, out of players with a decade more experience, Nike picked her. Only her. For the biggest billboards in the biggest tennis city on earth. Filipino fans aren't just excited about this. They're emotional, because for a lot of them, this isn't just an advertisement. This is the moment it finally feels real, the moment their country stops being an afterthought in global sports and starts being the headline. So let's actually talk about why this is happening, what it means, and why Filipino tennis fans everywhere are calling this the biggest moment for the sport in the Philippines since Eala first picked up a racket. Let's be completely honest about where Alex Eala actually sits on the tour right now, because that's what makes this story so interesting. She's ranked in the low 20s in the world. She has exactly one WTA title to her name, the DC Open, where she beat Jessica Pegula in a final that a lot of people weren't expecting her to win. She has never made it past the 3rd round of a Grand Slam tournament in her career. On paper, none of that screams "put my face on a building in Times Square." Brands usually reserve that kind of real estate, the kind of exposure that costs more in a single week than most athletes make in sponsorship money all year for the biggest names in the sport. The slam champions, the former number ones, the players who've already proven, beyond any doubt, that their face alone can move product off shelves. Alex Eala hasn't proven that yet, not by the traditional measuring stick anyway. So the question every tennis insider is quietly asking is simple. Why her? Why now? What does Nike know that the rest of the tennis world hasn't fully caught on to yet? Here's the thing about Nike. They don't do anything by accident. Every dollar they spend on an athlete is calculated, tested, and planned months, sometimes years in advance. So if you actually go back and trace what Nike has quietly been building around Alex Eala over the past year, a pattern starts to emerge. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It started small, almost easy to miss if you weren't paying close attention. Before her Wimbledon debut on center court, Nike didn't just hand her a standard kit like every other sponsored player. They designed something personal, a custom hair accessory inspired by the sampaguita, the national flower of the Philippines. That is not something a brand does for just another athlete on their roster. That's the kind of detail reserved for someone a company is quietly building a story around, not simply outfitting for a match. Then came the magazine cover. Vogue Philippines put her on the front page, not in a group feature, not as a side mention, but front and center, styled head to toe in Nike, in an editorial that leaned hard into her heritage and her identity as a Filipina on the world stage. Sponsors don't typically coordinate that level of editorial involvement unless they're trying to turn an athlete into more than just a competitor. They're trying to turn her into a symbol. Weeks after that cover dropped, Eala posted from Nike's global headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon. And this is the detail that really got Filipino fans talking. Nike's own corporate account welcomed her in Filipino, not in English, in Filipino. If you're not from the Philippines, you might have scrolled right past that post without a second thought. But Filipino fans didn't scroll past it. They understood immediately what that moment meant. You don't get flown out to a company's global headquarters and personally welcomed in your own native language unless that company has already made up its mind that you're going to be one of their faces going forward. And now, this, billboards, in New York City. During Grand Slam season, the single biggest stretch of the entire tennis calendar. Line up the timeline and it stops looking like a coincidence and starts looking like a campaign that's been building for over a year, one deliberate step at a time. Here's what a lot of people covering this story are completely missing, though this was never really only about Alex Eala as an individual. For decades, Nike's biggest tennis marketing campaigns have gone to Americans, to Europeans, and to a small handful of Japanese stars. Southeast Asia has essentially never been part of that conversation at the franchise level, despite the Philippines being home to more than 100 million people. And despite being one of the most sneaker-obsessed, brand-loyal fan bases anywhere on the planet. Alex Eala isn't just an athlete that Nike decided to invest in. She's the key Nike is using to open a door into a market they have never fully tapped into before. That billboard in New York isn't just celebrating one tennis player having a good season. It's Nike sending a message to every other brand watching that the Philippines, a market they've historically ignored, is officially part of the global sports conversation now. That's exactly why this moment hits differently for Filipino fans than it might for a casual tennis viewer scrolling past a highlight clip. It's not just our player got an ad deal, it's our country finally got noticed. And when you've spent years watching every major sponsorship, every billboard, every global campaign go to athletes from everywhere except home, a moment like this carries weight that numbers on a ranking list can't fully capture. And to be fair, it hasn't all been smooth sailing for Eala either, which honestly makes this whole story land even harder. Last year, in this exact same tournament, Alex Eala lost in the second round. She didn't hide from that loss or pretend it didn't sting. She posted about it honestly afterward, calling it a reminder to stay grateful for the dream itself, even on the days when things don't go the way you hoped they would. Months later, she was lifting her very first WTA trophy. That's the part of this story that makes the Billboard hit even harder for the people who've followed her closely. This isn't a brand attaching its name to a flawless, easy success story with no bumps along the way. This is a brand betting on someone who has already shown her fans exactly how she responds when things go wrong and who has come back stronger every single time, without exception. So where does this story go from here? The 2026 US Open runs from August 23rd through September 13th, and Eala's exhibition match against Iva Jovic is already being treated as one of the marquee events of the lead-up week. After that, Nike's next confirmed release tied to her is a new kit for Wimbledon 2026. Every single one of those moments is another opportunity for another campaign, another billboard, another headline splashed across social media, and every one of them is another chance for the rest of the tennis world to watch. In real time, whether Nike's bet on a 21-year-old from the Philippines was the smartest marketing decision of the year, or whether it was simply ahead of its time by a matter of months. Either way, one thing is already certain. The Philippines is no longer waiting on the sidelines of global tennis, hoping to eventually get noticed. Right now, this week, on the sides of buildings in the most famous city in the world, they already have been. So here's the real question, and it's one worth sitting with for a second. Is Nike putting Alex Eala on a billboard in New York City because she's already a superstar, or because they're building one, right in front of all of us, one carefully planned campaign at a time? Drop your honest prediction in the comments below. Where do you think Alex Eala will be ranked by the end of this year? And do you think this billboard moment ends up being remembered as the turning point? And if you believe this is only the very beginning of something much bigger, make sure you're subscribed, because we're going to be tracking every single billboard, every product drop, and every match, all the way through to Arthur Ashe Stadium.